Night. Thank you for all for coming. As you may or may not know, we put this on Facebook Live, and then after the council meeting, it gets uploaded and turns into an archive, so it makes it harder to find, but we're working on trying to make that easier for you. So please go back and look, or if you never have a chance to come, you know you can see what we're doing at our council meetings. So we will call this meeting to order. We're all here accounted for. Let's start by the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's.
Bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for another wonderful day. Give us the guidance to be able to make decisions that are for the good of the community and the betterment of our residents. And we thank you for that guidance and the ability to make those decisions. In God's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Next, adoption of the agenda. Any changes?
No, ma'am.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Next is adoption of minutes. We had our regular meeting on March 12th. If you've had a chance to look at them, if there are no changes, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. As I walk down, am very sad. I'm a Clemson Auburn fan, and Mayor Johnson tricked me into a bet because I was visiting my father and we had no internet, and he said, let's have a bet on the Clemson. What is your team? Mississippi State. I can't. It's the wrong color. Anyway, I was with my father who has no internet, and I said, sure, I'll bet you. Clemson's got to be doing well. Well, he knew they were losing, I think. So I have to wear this. Let's go on down and see what we have to do with this shirt.
Give it back?
I'll give it back to you after we're done. Keep it for next year. So we'll tuck my target. So thank you, Mayor. I love betting. Okay, moving on. We have many presentations and celebrations. Always begin with our character. Is Jillian? For her? Come. The vice principal at May River. And so we work with the school district. We work at the school district and celebrate our kids who get this character trait of the month. And they do it throughout the school district of 26,000 plus kids, and our school district in our side of Beaufort County is half of that. So we have a lot of children going to school in Bluffton in the cluster. They all get nominated. It all falls into some kind of method of getting to the top, and one student out of our 14 or 15,000 students in our cluster gets selected for a character trait. And this month it was honesty and integrity. And Jillian, is it Premer? Yes. Jillian Premer is a 10th grader at May River High School, and she was selected. So I'm thrilled you're here. So you stand here and introduce yourself. And this is for her. And we don't give these out regularly. It's a coin that she gets to keep. And please tell her how proud we are of her. And thank you for accepting it on her behalf. Now we have to move this thing. I know. Anyway, introduce yourself.
Hi, again, good evening. My name is Tyrone Jackson. I'm one of the assistant principals at May River High School. And as the mayor said, Normally, we give these out to students who are nominated by their teachers based on exhibiting the character traits of that month. And as she stated, during that month, the focus was on honesty and integrity. And the teacher who nominated Jillian said that she always demonstrates honesty and integrity in the class. She takes all AP classes, she gets A's, but more than often, she always seeks to empower others to do what is right and to tell the truth. So much so that teacher accidentally passed out the answer key to one of their AP tests, and she returned it, and everyone in the class kind of got on her about it. You could imagine that in high school setting, how that would go. But when asked why she gave the answer key back, she said simply it was the right thing to do. And so when we have students that exhibit characteristics like that and actually value being honest and trustworthy, then we have to reward those students. So I'm grateful that she was able to receive this.
Thank you, and welcome. Please come back anytime you want to share any news from May River. We love hearing about it. Next is the Arbor Day Proclamation. Is someone going to accept this? Who's coming to accept the Arbor Day Proclamation? Kevin? Brian? Come on. Who wrote it? Whoever wrote it has to accept it. Kim should accept it. It's his line. Whereas, in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. Whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was the first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. Whereas trees reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air and water, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. Whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, paper, fruits, and nuts for nourishment, and countless other goods and products. Whereas when properly selected, planted in the right places, and tended appropriately, trees in our town increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. Whereas the Bluffton Town Council and Beautification Committee are committed to Tree is the Key tree management program that promotes a safe, healthy, and attractive urban forest. Now I, Lisa Salka, Mayor of the Town of Bluffton, along with Town Council, proclaim Friday, April 26th as Arbor Day in the town and urge all of you to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. Thank you, Brian. Do you want to talk about any Arbor Day celebrations we're going to have, or do you know?
Yes, we have a celebration on Friday, April 26th at 8:30. We are planting a new oak tree out in front of Town Hall here to supplement and kind of complement the new landscaping that we have here at the renovated Town Hall. So please come out and join us on Friday.
Thank you. Thank you. And that'll be, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That will be on Facebook, and I know all the schools do celebrations as well, and we'll get that out. Next is Fair Housing Month proclamation. Forward. For accepting this. Whereas April 11th, 2019 marks the 51st anniversary of the passage of the Fair Housing Act, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing for all who live in the United States. Whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, and national origin. Whereas the economic stability, community health, and human relations in all communities are improved by diversity and integration. Whereas fair housing is integral in the ethical commitment of members of the National Association of Realtors and the Hilton Head Area Association of Realtors, and is critical to the ability of all real estate professionals to serve their clients, customers, and communities. Whereas acts of housing discrimination and barriers to equal housing opportunity are repugnant to a common sense of decency and fairness. Therefore, I, Lisa Salka, Mayor of Bluffton, along with Bluffton Town Council, hereby proclaim the month of April 2019 as Fair Housing Month in the town of Bluffton to establish Bluffton as an inclusive community committed to fair housing for all residents and prospective residents of Bluffton. Thank you. Do you want to say anything, or is there anything else?
For the Bluffton Village Festival next month, we will have some information at the town's table for fair housing. So again, that'll give us opportunity to answer some questions for residents, or at least have information available.
Thank you. And that's every first Saturday, the Saturday before Mother's Day. You can always count on that. National Day of Prayer Proclamation. Come and just come on. Anybody else want to come up? You're it. Thank you very much. This is the National Day of Prayer Proclamation, our third or fourth one under your guidance. Second? Okay. Whereas we come together on National Day of Prayer as one nation under God to show gratitude for our many blessings, to give thanks for his providence, and to ask for his continued wisdom, strength, and protection as we chart a course for the future. Whereas we are united in prayer, each according to our own faith and tradition, and we believe that in America, people of all faiths, creeds, and religions must be free to exercise their natural right to worship according to their consciences. Whereas in 1789, President George Washington proclaimed a day of public thanksgiving and prayer, calling upon Americans to unite in most humbly offerings our prayers and supplications to the great Lord and ruler of nations. In 1988, the Congress called on the President to proclaim the first Thursday in May as National Day of Prayer. On this National Day of Prayer, the right to pray freely and live according to one's faith is under threat around the world from coercive governments and terrorist organizations. Now, therefore, I, Lisa Salka, Mayor of the town of Bluffton, along with Town Council, do hereby recognize May 2nd, 2019 as National Day of Prayer in the town of Bluffton, and we invite all citizens, if they so choose, to pray in accordance with their own faiths and thanksgiving for the freedoms and blessings we have received. Thank you very much. Thank you. Would you like to say a word?
Absolutely. Everybody, May the 2nd at 6 p.m. at Oscar Frazier Field of Dreams, we will have a celebration, and we just would like everybody in the town to come out. We have 8 different churches participating, and so we're going to have hot dogs and hamburgers, and we're going to praise God and sing praise songs and pray to God, and we're going to unite. Unity in the community, that's what I'm trying to get. So everybody come out for unity in the community and praise God.
Thank you. I'll move it to Mark Orlando, introduction of new employees.
Mayor Salka, good evening, Mayor, Council. Pleased to introduce several new employees tonight. It's been some months, so a lot of these employees have been with us for some time and integrating well. Just really call upon everybody by name, ask you to stand up quickly and so we can say hello and welcome. So first, Anthony Altizer, our new building inspector. Welcome, Anthony. Thank you for being here. Rita Kemper, our receptionist out of our customer service area. Welcome, Rita. John, we can't keep him away from here, Hutchinson. Welcome back.
Oh, did he leave?
John, for everybody to know, John used to run the capital projects program and retired, and now he's back working part-time with us, helping us with easements and a lot of our sewer projects, so we're blessed to have him. Frank Bostick Sr., Frank's not here tonight, but he's a public works worker, and he's doing well, so welcome to Frank. Damian Craig, Stormwater Coordinator, Field Assistant. Hi, Damian. Is it Damian? Okay. That's easier to remember. Welcome. Amber King, Police Officer 1. Hi, Amber. Welcome very much. Thank you for serving. And Arthur Mark Robson, Police Officer 2. Yes, sir. Okay. Mark, we go by Mark? Yes, sir. Or are you just saying that?
Is it spelled the same way?
Yes, everything.
Change that on your application, right?
They changed the spelling.
Timothy D'Angelo, Police Officer 1. Welcome. Welcome to you. Thank you, sir. Jacob Brainerd. Please tell me I said that properly. Brainerd. Thank you. Welcome to you. He's a Police Officer 1, Mayor and Council. And Zach Pouchprom, Police Officer 2.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Did I pronunciate that? I practiced with our town clerk before the meeting. Yes, Kim helped. Well, welcome to you all, and really happy to have you and pleased to have you as part of our town family.
Jillian, come forward. Jillian, I just saw a young student And Mom, come on, let's get a picture. Come on. Talked about you just a minute ago. Probably a lot of your students weren't happy when you handed back the AP answer thing. Your vice principal spoke very highly of you, and we're just super proud. This is Jillian Premer, that won the character trait of the month for Bluffton. So she comes all this way. I think it's worth her getting up here. So you get the certificate. We don't give a lot of these out, so keep these. Actually, this was taken from the law enforcement that gives out coins for.
Mayor, bring the mother up. She's
Mother,
closer.
come up.
She's trying to take a picture from the back.
Is there a sister? Who are they?
That's my mom, that's my sister, and that's my dad.
Oh, well, they have to come up too. You can't sit in the back. You know that. No sitting in the back. We're getting a picture with all of us. So anyway, this is just a really special. Get a good, everyone slide. Come on, sister, you can get it. Great, thank you. Congratulations, and thank you for coming. Very important to us to recognize. Okay, moving on. No. Moving on to public comment. Public comment is set up in two ways. We have public comment at first that's relating to formal agenda items. And then we have a second set of public comment that's related to anything you want to discuss. So I'm confused on what the agenda, oh, you've got an agenda. I didn't understand how you wrote that. So if you come forward when I call your name, please say your name and your address, even though we may know you. It is a 3-minute public comment. You can see the rules, address council with respect, and also be more respectful of people like Jillian and high school students and young people that come here a lot to see our council meetings, and they are watching on Facebook. So just be respectful of who you're talking in front of, and just keep your comments to 3 minutes. So with that, we will call our first one, and it's on agenda item, I guess under the public hearing. Mr. Hank Johnston, come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, Council, first, congratulations on the new town hall. Came by here Friday, dropped off that lovely shirt you're wearing, and took a tour. Mayor, it's okay to wear that shirt. It is a first cousin of Clemson.
Okay.
As Auburn is a first cousin of Clemson, as Georgia Tech is a first cousin of Clemson. As you look at all the land-grant institutions, we're proud to wear each other's shirts.
Yes,
so I'm
sir.
proud to have you wear that. I'm also would be proud to wear the Clemson shirt had Clemson won.
Well, you may.
I attended the Affordable Housing Coalition, is that what it is, Brad? This morning, and I was excited to hear about Austin Place and the possibility of it having 289 affordable housing units in that development. Congratulations on that. But I'm here to talk about item Roman numeral XI 3, which is the removal of 392 units from Buckwalter Place to a new development on 278. One, I'm disappointed, as I'm sure you are, that Buckwalter Place hasn't quite implemented the vision that we all had envisioned when we started it. Mixed use, retail below, housing above, offices above, and with the advent of Kroger taking a large preponderance of the acreage there, that vision can't be implemented. But I'm here to ask you and the negotiating committee that when you discuss this item with the developers, that you take a stab at placing those requirements for that vision that come rightfully from Buckwalter Place to the new mixed-use development. There is a need for that in Bluffton. If you look at the possibility of having housing above retail. And if you just think about all the retail that we have implemented over the past 10, 15 years, if there had been one house above each retail establishment, what we would have as an opportunity for people to have workforce housing. I would even volunteer to be on the negotiating committee. I was told by Bree that I had to fill out an application, and I haven't been able to pull that off and print it yet, but I will be submitting that. Good luck with that effort. Congratulations on your town hall, and keep doing the fine work that you're doing. I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for coming and serving the time you did for your community. Our public comment? Public comment is closed. Moving on to communications from mayor and council. Right?
I just want to applaud everybody that had anything to do with getting the organization together and the press conference and bringing a lot of attention to the Let's See 43 campaign for the distracted driving and to do something to try and prevent it. I was fortunate enough to attend the presentation at Bluffton High School, and I asked the principal if it was a mandatory attendance, and was told no, that the kids that were there, young adults, were there at their own accord. And during the presentation, what really amazed me was the interest that they had in the presentation and the way that they focused on the words that were being said. And I just hope that they take that to heart and use that going forward. And again, I just am very thankful that they put the time and effort into doing this. Thank you.
Over here?
Yeah, I want to take the time out to welcome my Campbell Church family. I see they're coming in groves tonight. We got John and Constance and Rochelle and Brenda and Gloria and Frank. Thank you guys for sharing your time with us tonight.
Anything else? Let me just, Dan, anything you good? Terry, anything you can?
Madam Mayor, it might be appropriate for you as a trustee on the Heritage Classic Foundation to remind everyone that we are starting next week. I'm the vice chairman of our foundation, and it is wonderful to see how Bluffton has taken the leadership role in putting up banners, putting license plates on police cars, and all those things that y'all have done over the last couple of years. And we thank you on behalf of our Heritage Classic Foundation. You'll see the mayor walking around in her jacket a bunch next week, and we appreciate everything that Bluffton does for our RBC Heritage Classic Foundation and our tournament next week. So thank you.
Finger, and I was going to hit on that. We have spring break. We have Easter week. We just had prom at Bluffton High School. Your prom is May, coming up at May River. A lot's going on. We have Taste of Bluffton this weekend. There's just a lot going on. It's the start of our kind of silly, crazy season of fun. So make good decisions on that. I was with Mr. Lutzenkirchen on the distracted driving, and it was something to hear someone stand up and talk about the loss of a child and wanting to make a difference, and we want to make a difference in our town. So children, young people, Jillian, Teens for Healthy Youth, and Youth Council. Those are two things you can get involved with, but I think you probably do a ton already. But a lot of students didn't know about the Teens for Healthy Youth. I thought that was interesting, and I think they've got to get that word out in all the high schools. So there are definitely things our young people can do to make things better for all of us. They're awfully, amazingly intelligent, and I think Mr. Lutz saw it at one of the schools. So anyway, I think that's it. I think that's all I had as well. Moving on. Public hearing and final reading. Now, I would like to maybe ask a question before this comes up. I think we've had emails, and I don't know y'all's thought, but can we discuss this one? This is about our public projects as a part of this, and we've had emails about changing the public projects to have the same level of look as other projects. If you are willing to move forward with this, I think it's fine, but Terry said it's enough of a change, it has to go back to planning.
That portion would have to go back,
But
not
how can we
everything.
do public hearing? Can we do public hearing?
Yes, we can.
And then we'll do a public hearing back on that other part if it goes back?
Goes back,
It's
that's
not the
correct.
whole entire
That's right.
change?
Correct.
That's, okay, thank you. I didn't listen. Okay, public hearing and final reading of the approval of an ordinance for text amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23. This is application process and the design standards. Do you want to go through a little bit and then I'll do the public hearing? Or do
Yes, ma'am,
you
however
just a tiny,
however
maybe
you would
a
like to do it.
30-second
Sure, I
preview?
can I'll do a brief overview, and if you have additional questions, I'm happy to
Then
go
we'll
into
jump, let's
more.
do, yeah, super duper brief, and then we'll do public hearing, and then we'll all discuss.
Yes, ma'am. So we are here this evening for a request for a text amendment specifically for Article 3, the application process, as well as Article 5 for design standards. As you know, this is the second reading, so at the first reading, we discussed public project review process, the minor major planning unit development master plan review process, preliminary final development plan review process, public public notice of development projects, and then adjacent street buffers. We had a brief background is that in May 8th of last year is where the strategic plan was adopted. One of the items listed on there was dealing with zoning ordinance calibration. October 9th, we held a public workshop to discuss some of these items to give direction to staff. January 23rd of this year, Planning Commission held a public hearing on a few of these items, and then again on February 27th, a few of the additional items, and then on March 12th was the first reading of all these items. And this was the first reading that you had, which was all of the items that were listed here, Section 318, 396, 324, 3.2.4, and then 537B2B. Just for a quick clarification, some of the information, the concern was what type of information be required on the signs for these public notices. Staff just provided, and it was in your packet, just kind of outlining the information that when in the future when we do have signs that will be placed on properties that a development plan or any type of plan is applied for, this would be the information. If this is approved, we would then go into actual sign production, but this would be the information that's on there. The review criteria, that's all listed in your packet. I'm happy to go over any specific one that you may have. And then your actions this evening are to approve with conditions, or to deny the application as submitted. From a process standpoint, you can see we're here this evening for the 9th. This is the final reading and public hearing, so you will need to call for a public hearing on this. And then I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Go to public hearing. There's a public comment period for the public hearing on the item X1, ordinance for text amendments to the town's code of ordinances regarding application and design standards. That can call for public comment. Third and final call for public comment. Public comment is closed. If I can just jump back, I meant to announce our county councilman here. Thank you very, isn't that? Yes, Mark, I thought that was you. You were like, looked at me like, who? Thank you, Mark, for coming and being here. It's nice to see our elected officials at the county come by, so thank you. Okay, moving on to, do you want to finish? Were there changes from first reading? Was there anything that was to be changed?
No, ma'am, the only thing that we had was just clarifying the information that would be provided on signage.
Any questions of? None at all.
I'm assuming that you're going to address.
Well, I was going to ask, it's always nice when they come into public comment, but it is also nice that people are seeing this on Facebook and they have questions and maybe missed the meeting. I got an email and a phone call from a member of HPC that really urged us to consider letting our public projects go through the same role, not just to have comment only. And he made some pretty compelling remarks, and I just haven't had a chance to talk to y'all and what y'all's thoughts were on this. Up to us to change it. If we're happy with this, we can move on, but I did want to put that out there for y'all to discuss.
Can I jump in?
Yes, sir.
We all received a letter from the chairman of the HPC, and he did make a strong case. and I personally agree with his argument. The negatives is the review for comment only doesn't really have any teeth to it, and it kind of sends a message, do as I say, not as I do. The positives show the citizens we believe that our town standards should apply equally to both government and public institutions. And it's an opportunity for our staff that if there is flaws in the process, they will reveal themselves. It becomes a burden to the government to operate under that jurisdiction. In reading the Section 318.2 and also reading Section 324.3, and the town attorney can help me with this, it appears the only thing that needs to be stricken is for comment only. If you leave the rest of it intact, it applies, so I think.
I think that would, that and a little tune-up there would make it, wanted HBC to have approval rights, could massage that and make that clear. I think that would be enough of a change from first reading that we'd need to excise that from your motion tonight, send that back. Heather would need to go back to Planning Commission for review, and then come back to y'all at the appropriate time for first reading.
For just that item.
For that item.
Everything else, we're
Everything else could
happy
be
with,
approved.
moves
That's correct.
forward, and, I mean, I'm fine with that if you're that concerned over it. I don't see where we're going to have a public project that falls within the next 60 days. And I think we could take it upon ourselves to just do the right thing and go there if council agrees with that. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I just got a legal question, I guess. So, just out there. So if we want to do something and they say no, is it not turning the final decision over to them, even if the elected council?
Correct.
Point, Larry.
Well, I'm a little bit on Dan's thinking, and when I did talk to Hank, we talked a long time without the email. It does give us the ability to test how the private sector goes through it. And we always hear if there are issues, and I don't think we hear issues anymore, and it's not from staff level at all. But if there are problems, and now we can see it firsthand, then we can be talked with as a council of this is getting a little more personal. Maybe they do this with others. Maybe they're perfect. I mean, I think it's a very professional commission that's taken on. So I tend to agree with Dan, and I think it'd be good for us to go through that process. And you see it's difficult. It's probably difficult for private individuals as well.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, that the Historic Preservation Commission, they review the architecture of buildings. So they're not reviewing I like to refer to it as the horizontal aspect of it, the land development side of it. They're just reviewing the architecture of buildings and how they fit into the historic district.
So it would be potentially Wright family property, but it wouldn't be the dock.
I believe that actually the dock would be a part of that, and any type of structures would be reviewed by the HPC as well.
Anything vertical.
Any type of structure, yes. So vertical, yes.
It's a lot of rain coming down. Okay.
And Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
if I may, just so you know, if you so choose to change that, there is an item on the consent agenda, the resolution for the process change. There would need to be a change on that as well, because we do have listed on the process table that the HPC would just be a reviewing authority, or a reviewing body, and that the Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO administrator, is still the authority for the review of that. So I would ask that if you make that change, that we would then need to remove that from the consent agenda and then make a approve with condition for that item as well, please.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
I was just going to bring a point up that my way of thinking, and maybe it's we appoint those folks to advise us. So realistically, what I'm saying, I say, okay, well, I'm going to pick you to tell me what you think I should do. We're giving them the power to rule over us, and we are the elected officials. I strongly feel that our neck's on the chopping block for everything that goes on. I think that we should not give away our duties because, I mean, that's just me. If it's our job to make those tough decisions, then I'm up for making tough decisions and taking the burden on my shoulders. So, just my way of looking at it. I mean,
Any other discussion?
I agree with Larry, 100%.
My concern is that what's happening is that when we made the application for the dock, it was denied, and then we had to go back, and they indicated to us that we had to do certain things, which we were in agreement to do. We know that, but I don't think they would know that. And because they're not knowing all of the circumstances that are involving in it, I don't think that they can make a fair and objective decision in reference to how that whole thing plays out. So I'm having a hard time with it myself.
no disrespect to their jobs or their abilities, and I'm sure they could make passing the buck part of it, that those residents elect us to make these decisions, then I think, you know, right or wrong, whether it's popular or it's unpopular, then the burden should the big challenge.
And just to, you know, based off of the code edits that are in front of you, they will be reviewing this. They will be reviewing it based off of the criteria that we already have set in place now. So they're a component of it, and they would provide their recommendation, very similar to any other project that we have, back to the UDO administrator. So there would be items that could potentially be corrected in the plans based off of their comments. It's just the way that this is designed is just that. They're providing their comments ultimately for the UDO administrator to make that decision for
Well, I have a
public project.
question on that, because this might be a good way to make it work. Do we, and forgive me because it's been a while, but on a project they provide comments, that then come to us for approval, and do we ever see that project? So we don't even see what their comments are. It stays on a staff level.
I would like to ask Kevin to use this building as an example.
Okay.
So the town council saw the building as we met individually. You saw the architecture. We met on scope. We met on schedule. We met on budget. We met on details. I don't believe that as a council, as we met, that we reviewed the project, the window details, the column details, the mass and scale details that our Historic Preservation Commission would review and approve as part of a certificate of appropriateness. We didn't review it at that level. Now, staff reviewed it at that level. We designed it as our guidance. I asked Kevin to talk, and then I jumped in.
I know, because I thought you said Kevin to talk.
But I was very involved with Town Hall, and we sent this building to HPC for comment, and they provided us comments, and we addressed as much of those awesome comments from the chair and vice chair as part of the review process, right? So as part of the Historic Preservation Review Committee, which is made up of staff and a couple of HPC members, including chair and vice chair, we addressed as many of the comments as practical. There were more comments provided than we could possibly address, however. And so at that point, you use your best judgment. One of the comments weren't per code. They were simply a recommendation. So we didn't include all their recommendations. But those items that were code specific, we addressed. So, but what I think they're asking for is that public projects, rather than be under review for recommendation to UDO administrator, I believe Mr. McCracken, the chair of HPC, is asking that HPC provide a certificate of appropriateness and approval of a building. And so what buildings do we have in our future? We have the Squire Pope Cottage. We have the bathroom structure, so call it the garage at the Squire Pope property, at the Wright family property. And we have the little outbuilding, which will become restrooms at 68 Boundary Street, right? We're going to fix the roof, wrap the building at the bathroom. So what HPC would ask is that we bring that building to them, the one that's across from Michael Hahn's property, across from DuBose Park, really, that we would bring that to HPC for review and approval, not review and recommendation. And in the past, we've been bringing it to a subset of the HPC, 2 members rather than a full board, for review and recommendation. So what they're asking for is more authority and approval authority. At a staff level, we're absolutely not opposed to that. I've been here long enough. You've all heard me really give the guidance of, yes, absolutely, let's talk about the code, and if the code doesn't work, then let's modify the code to what works. Let's keep ourselves fresh and updated. So as a staff, it's...
Well, it goes from being kind of it's not public.
Right.
So it's a public project, not getting a lot of public input, to an HPC that's going to provide public input. And I can see where, they should be following code and not having personal thoughts into it. But I was trying to go with, can't we get their comments and bring it to council for us to look at? But see, these projects don't come before council at all. So our public projects aren't getting any public, really, input unless we go through these workshops. And I mean, I can see where we could have a workshop and have them there and give comment. So.
Correct. Mayor, if I could add one thing, we do bring projects to those workshops, and we do bring the architecture forward. So we've never had public project review approved by Planning Commission or HPC historically.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Any questions? Any motions? Any what?
I got one more question.
Okay.
Just
fun.
So basically, these changes, if we approve this on second reading, final reading, it doesn't come back to us anyway. It's more of a you, Mark, and the department heads, and not really us. I mean, the way it is, the way it's worded. So,
is that a question?
But then again, y'all are employees and they're appointees, so.
I think you asked the question is if, use the building as a great example. We're sitting in a building that we worked with architects and took some time and funding to provide to the community. We went through a review, through design and review with 2 members of HPC, not with the full board. We worked together in workshop and then one-on-one for you all to know what the scope looks like, what the windows look like, but we didn't examine it together as a council and a staff to know if it met code or not. We went through that process internally as a staff level and then also with HPC. The only difference is HPC didn't approve it. They only gave their recommendation. So they're asking for more authority in our project. Squire Pope Cottage is the next best example in our future. Do you really want HPC approving the design and architecture on the Squire Pope Cottage, or is current practice of simply bringing it to them for review and comment appropriate?
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Motion to approve this as written, and then if someone has a motion, otherwise, jump right in.
I do want to add one thing, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Real quick. In Mark's last final comments there, I just find it personally incredulous that we would have a historic house or a building in the middle of the historic district with overview that was created for a historic preservation committee that may or may not have any oversight. I find that just amazing.
I mean, I'm personally okay with them having it. I guess I don't want to throw anyone under the bus that isn't here. I guess at a later time, I'd love to know if comments have moved toward changes, and if they have, I think we should get it. I really, I'm on Dan's thoughts with that, but.
I did ask the town attorney a minute ago. I think the dock Something could be written possibly to remove the dock from any jurisdiction?
You would have the right as council to do that.
Right now, we're down the road.
It would take a change, which would have to go through the process.
We go this route, couldn't we add it and start all over and just put it in there, since if a motion is made and passed that this goes back to planning commission, can't we go in and get that in there too, to exempt our I mean, we could say exempt or non-historic, I mean, we could say exempt or several things, but if we want to get this dock, which is so squirmy as it is, I just don't think it needs anybody else when we know the dock we're building is exactly what's been approved across the water. So could we go in and ask you to do that too?
Good, yes.
Okay.
Well, just for general conversation, to go. I was approached this week by an individual who's upset that the windows are in this building because this building was built in 1964. Over 50 years old. It should not be altered from its state because it is a structure, which I know it is because I started the first grade here in 1964. That's what I don't want to open myself to, is somebody's bent and determined that they don't like something or don't want something. Got a lot of questions with different properties like we saw last month, that our authority and make these hard decisions as much as we can. I don't want to, just my point on the whole thing is nothing other than that.
Well, when you're talking about a building such as this, you've got ADA and you've got a lot of other things such as fire suppression, et cetera, that have to be retrofitted into this building in order for it to be considered a building that can be occupied by the public. So if you're looking at it from a standpoint of the windows, if they don't meet egress requirements, you know, they can't be utilized because the codes have changed. So I don't understand how that could be, you know, how they could say we don't want the windows changed, because I don't see where the, you know, I just, you know, what happens if we pass this the way it's written and we come to an impasse? What happens on that impasse? Is it a situation where basically we have no input and it's written on the wall the way it is? Or do we as council have the ability to take and go back and say, okay, fine, you brought up good points, but, and if we pass this the way it is, I don't see that happening. And I mean, I'm all for historic preservation and making sure that our history and everything about Bluffton is way up here. But I also think that it has to be approached in a reasonable manner. And with what we're talking about here, I just don't, I'm having a hard time with it.
So just so I don't want anyone voting the wrong way, this proposed motion keeps public projects at a staff level with just comment. If you follow the email request of Mr. McCracken, then that would change this. This comes out. So I just didn't want you to vote. So again, if there are no other questions, we can make a motion and see where it falls.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the second final as is.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. 3-2. Next is formal items. Consideration of an ordinance amending the Town of Bluffton fiscal year 2019 budget to provide for the expenditures of certain funds and to allocate sources of revenue for said funds. Tricia, good evening.
Evening, Mayor and Council.
One day you're going to have to just explain that all to me, the 2 and 4.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have before you the third budget amendment for fiscal year 19's budget. This is Mostly a housekeeping item. If you see up on the screen, we are proposing amendments, minor amendments to the general fund as well as the debt service fund to accommodate a need for unexpected or unanticipated maintenance at the LEC for the AC system. We are also providing for transfers into the CIP fund for Town Hall for the Office of School Facilities requirement for additional fire suppression systems, as well as the donation from the Bluffton Rotary Club for the Oscar Fraser Park Pavilion, as well as additional minor project scope adjustments. If you have any questions, I'm happy to go into that further. This is first reading. You will see this again next month.
Ooh, we're going up.
Sorry.
There you go. Well, I have my own here, so I'm trying to keep up with you.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm looking where you are.
I'm trying to get to the recommended motion, but I'm happy to go back and discuss any of the items in the staff report if you have any direct questions.
Any questions for Tricia? This is very usual that we do kind of right before budget.
Yes. And so
In a county kind of thing.
these are just catch-ups for the year so that we end the year with a positive budget.
Any questions? This is first reading. I'll come back next month. No workshop. No, it's not.
No,
a
ma'am,
public
not for
hearing.
the amendment.
Okay. If there are no questions, there a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance amending the Town of Bluffton fiscal year 2019 budget to provide for expenditures of certain funds and to allocate sources of revenue for the said funds.
So moved.
Thank you.
There you go. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Next is item 11.2, consideration of acceptance of the prioritization of list of capital improvement projects for fiscal years 2024. This came from Planning Commission, correct? And you're seeing it. So, Brian, how are you?
Good evening, how are y'all?
Good.
Okay, so we're here tonight to seek your adoption of the Planning Commission's recommendation to Town Council of a prioritized list of the capital improvements program projects for the next 5-year fiscal years, 2020 through 2024, which will be included in the FY20 budget. This is in accordance with South Carolina state law. The Planning Commission has the power and duty to prepare and recommend to Town Council the capital improvements program, setting forth projects to implement plans which have been adopted, such as the comprehensive plan. Putting forth an annual listing of these projects for your consideration. The Planning Commission is charged with reviewing the CIP project list and the priorities and making this recommendation by affirmative vote to Town Council. All can review the recommendation and use that to set the current fiscal year, or the next year's fiscal year budget. Your staff report, we're going to be looking at attachment 2 in order to save some time. Attachment 1 shows projects that we have either completed or already underway. They've already been ranked. We've already initiated those projects. So we're just looking at the 5-year fiscal year 20 through 24 projects. Projects are in 2 groups, labeled 1 or 2. 1 is just a higher priority than 2. They're not ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're not ranked in any particular order. When we get to the next slide, the order is in by project number. So you'll see some that go 1, 2, 1, 2. It's just because that's the project number on the left side dictates that. But here's the list. Start with number 1 is the Squire Pope Carriage House Preservation. You can see on the right, the columns on the right, that's staff priority, and then the Planning Commission priority. And I can skip ahead and just say that they agreed with staff on all of these, so there was no change in this, but we both ranked those that project a 1. Worth Street Lighting was ranked a 2. York District Sewer Extensions 3 and 4 ranked a 1. York District Extensions 5 and 6 were both ranked a 1. May River Road Pocket Park, that's the little area that was donated as part of the May River Road streetscape, that was ranked a 2. Bridge Street streetscape was ranked a 2. Cove skids were ranked a 2. Veterans Memorial, New Riverside Park, Bose Park. It's beyond just the shade sail. There's other. Those were all number 1. River Road Pedestrian Trail, which, if you remember, Planning Commission added that last year. They added a project to the list. Opted that as part of the priority list, but that's a 2. Kind of Bluffton affordable housing is a 1. Improvements to Town Hall, both outside and inside, is a 1. Improvements to the auditorium is a 1. Supporting the Technical College of the Low Country over at Buckwalter Place Commerce Park, that's a 1. And then upgrades to our safety cameras, bringing those back into technology. When we first started those cameras a few years ago, that equipment gets outdated pretty quick. We put a heavy load on those cameras. They have to repeat off each other. And so we're going to upgrade the switches in order to make That's it. I mean, quick discussion. I mean, you all can discuss this and we can look at any particular project you want. The data sheet packet, if you want a project, we can.
Questions?
How did we get the rankings again?
Staff came up, so basically staff came up with the priority. We presented that to Planning Commission. We discussed it with Planning Commission and then they approved.
And that goes back to Larry's point. How come council didn't have a voice in making a recommendation?
A lot of these carry over from last year. The only new projects I think we had were housing, that park, Memorial.
Wharf Street lighting, is that on last year's?
Yes, that was on last year's.
Brian,
Pages on it.
Mark won't answer it for me.
Well, the priority really comes from staff, and what we're recommending are projects that you have all expressed strong interest in out of the strategic plan workshops. So when we meet annually to work on strategic planning, what you won't see coming out of staff as a recommendation or a priority is anything unless that you've discussed this with us and gave us direction and strategic plan. We take all that entire list, we bring that to Planning Commission for prioritization. This is simply to be compliant with state code through our comprehensive planning efforts, through the planning enabling legislation makes us not only prioritize a strategic plan, but through our comprehensive plan. And that's what this is about. So you have a strong voice. You have a voice at the beginning in the strategic planning process, and then you have a final voice tonight once staff and Planning Commission really look at the priorities overall.
I saw this earlier this week, but this question is lingered in my mind, and I don't think that on the night of we see it as a collective group, we should have to make a decision based on our priorities. I think as a collective group, we should have time to after it.
I mean, I think we can discuss it now. I mean, we looked at it, we can discuss it. Do we agree with, just say this first one, both staff and Planning Commission labeled it a 1, we can make it a 2 today.
I know.
You want it to come to us? Because it always goes from planning to council, always. We get the last say. I'd rather have the last say than the first say, but we kind of had the first say, because didn't we come up with this list in February when we did our CIP list?
In February, we had 100 of things that we looked at.
But then we came back with a CIP update at a workshop. So we have had it. I guess we could change it, and I mean, I would rather go to the end and say, well, I don't agree. I think that Wharf Street lighting should be number 1, which is one thing I was going to say. I think Wharf Street lighting should be 1, but that's just 1/5 of me.
But that's what I'm saying. I have an opinion, and so am I.
That's why we're talking about it today.
But this is still just a recommendation.
No, this is a decision tonight.
This is not, I mean, it's a recommendation from the planning staff for us to approve the order of these projects that we've all.
Just the priority of it. Is it a
Because
high
we've
priority or is
approved
it
the projects.
Yeah.
We've approved them long ago.
Right. So basically where we are, if I understand, Fred, is there, do we have a concern of something that's on a 2 that should be a 1? Or is there a concern that there's one of those other projects that aren't on here at all?
I mean, we have 21 projects, right? We have 21 projects. 18 are ranked.
I mean, and this is also a fluid, I think we've
Where
since-
funding comes in too.
Right,
Because
correct.
if there's no funding for what we rank as number 1, we aren't getting it this year, period. That's why we carry over.
And that's why this goes through this whole budget
So-
process. So you'll look at this again through your budget workshops and then in the approval of the FY20 budget.
There's items such as water and sewer on Buck Island and Simmonsville Road that I don't see on this.
Buck Island, Simmonsville, the current phase 5, that's ongoing. We've already started. It's implemented. That priority is already.
I saw that.
Yeah, but I spoke with Mark a couple maybe weeks ago, and he told me he would get back to me when he know where that stands.
Yeah, on the phase 5, and we've talked several times trying to get that letter out of the grant, trying to get our grant award in hand. And once I know what that grant award in hand looks like, we'll be able to put a project schedule to it, Councilman Hamilton. So that project's not on the priority list tonight because it's already been prioritized. And so trying to understand.
Funding from, they've said we've been awarded the money. We just haven't received it, and we can't do anything until we receive it.
But because it's not a list today, but it's not on the list tonight because it's been on a list, it's been approved.
You've
You're
already-
not stopping work and moving on.
No, it's
That's
ongoing.
where he got.
No,
was
it's.
It hasn't lost its.
No, it's
Right,
ongoing.
yeah.
We're building it now. These are things that are in the future, the next 5 years. Attachment 1 showed you the projects we've already started.
So what happens to the other 5 projects? They're ongoing? So this is all of our projects right now we haven't prioritized, period. Everything
Projects.
else
Some of
is
these
ongoing.
Yeah, some of these you prioritized last year and they just carry forward because again, it's a 5-year program. But if you change the priority of it, it's just we would jump ahead to a 1 instead of a 2.
Along with all the
Yeah,
others
you
that are
have funding,
prioritized.
right? You have funding issues, staff issues. You know, we can't physically construct all 18 of these at once would be possible. So
Well, that's just like the dock at Calhoun Street. I didn't see that even.
because it's ongoing, we've already
It's
started.
already, right, that's what I understand.
Okay.
Funding's already.
So at
We've
this
received-
point, we can stop things and move back and go over, or let's do it, and if it's some way we need to see it presented better next year, can we look at it?
Totally, yes.
So any other questions on the projects that you don't see? Maybe he can alert us, let us know whether either ongoing, and they're ongoing without funding or with funding. So I guess that's where I'm going back. There are 21 projects, right? That's where I was a little confused on the whole list, because you had 3 attachments. Attachment 1 has 11 projects, but they're all labeled the same thing.
Right. So those are
Page 2 is 21 projects, page 3 is 18.
right. So not including attachment 1 up here just for the sake of because you've already approved it. It's already been prioritized. I'm just looking at for the next 5 years. These projects haven't been approved yet because those other ones are already. We already have the funding source. We've already started some form of the project, whether it's survey, design, easement acquisition.
Page 1, the 11 projects are done, because I see town hall, all of that. Page 2, 21 additional projects, which include neighborhood improvements.
Those are currently underway.
Currently, and they've been prioritized.
Yes.
Now you're asking us.
You're basically ahead of all these other ones that we're talking about now.
Yes, these are for the next 5 years.
So Fred, item 5, Buck Island Simmonsville Sewer Phase 5 has already been ranked and prioritized. So these are the remaining projects that we need to rank and prioritize. So do you want to does anybody have an issue with how they are done? I'm still going to fight for Wharf Street lighting to be number 1, but as long as it's number 2 and it's not going away.
It won't go away. Just
Won't
because
go
it's a 2
away,
doesn't
it's
mean it
just
goes away.
number- okay.
Right.
Okay, well, I'll Any other questions? Not?
I'm sorry,
Yes,
I do
sir.
have a question. All right, Wharf Street lighting, as an example, is shown number 2. If funding becomes available for that project, or a grant becomes available for that project that we can apply for, I would make an assumption that we would apply for that grant and that project would change from a 2 to a 1, predicated upon the funds becoming available to us to be able to tackle and complete that project.
I don't know of a particular lighting grant that we could get, but if something...
I'm using that as, as an
If
example.
something happened that made it seem like it would jump that project up, whether it's a safety need, it's not just financial. Let's say we really identified a safety issue, we could always bring that back to you and bump it up in priority.
Any other questions?
We do have the authority, power, or whatever the word may be in this, that if we, 6 months from now, we say, Mark, let's hold back on this right here, this needs to be done now. We can do that. So this doesn't really bind us to.
But we
You know
all
what I'm
just
saying?
get going down our day.
Right.
You know, he's going to take this and work. This is his Bible for the year. So that's probably not going to happen, but that's great. Okay. If no other questions, is there a motion to adopt the recommendations to council of a prioritized list of proposed capital improvements for the fiscal years 2020 to 2024 for this year's FY 2020 budget?
I made that motion.
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. The final formal item, number 3, request to remove certain restrictions for the use of 392 residential dwelling units converted from commercial rights within Buckwalter Plan Development to permit the transfer and immediate use of said units within other areas, to send all of this to the Town of Bluffton Negotiating Committee. You.
So as you said, this is a request for consideration by Town Council to refer a request that we received from Southeastern Development Associates to remove certain restrictions on 392 residential dwelling units, which are currently limited to a specific location for their use at Buckwalter Place Commerce Park. We're asking that that be sent to the Town of Bluffton Negotiation Committee for the review, negotiation, and recommendation to Planning Commission and ultimately to Town Council. A little bit of background, the request came to us back in March. It was submitted through a letter to the town manager requesting your consideration to, like I said, to remove those restrictions on those residential dwelling units. Right now, those dwelling units are limited to Buckwalter Place Commerce Park. The requirement to untie those strings, so to speak, and to remove those restrictions would be considered by Town Council per resolution. Should it go through the negotiating committee, planning commission, and then back to you, it would be done through a resolution. That was done in the past. Like I said, there is the ability to transfer those units. Those units, for what they are requesting is that they transfer those units to a 58-plus acre piece of undeveloped property located at US 278 in the future Hampton Parkway, basically in the vicinity of where the Bluffton Town Hall temporary offices were. The receiving property, like I said, that's subject to the Buckwalter concept plan, the Buckwalter development agreement, the amendments, and ultimately the Crossland-Reed Bluffton master plan. Further, as part of their request and part of that request that we received, they are offering the following, and these are items that would be discussed by the negotiating committee and moving through the process, would be that one, both Southeastern and Harris Teeter, the owners of the property, would perform all the work that's required to relocate and realign the Hampton Parkway so that it intersects with Highway 278. And there is an encroachment permit that's already been approved for that realignment, and they would complete that work. In addition to that, they have agreed to add a workforce housing requirement to those 392 dwelling units, that 10% of those units would be workforce housing, which is defined as 100% of the median family income for the town of Bluffton. Although we haven't received the 2019 numbers, have not been released yet. We're expecting them anytime this month. Just to give you an idea, the 2018 Beaufort County area median income for a family of 4 is $72,200. Just because it's been a while, that negotiating committee was approved by resolution in 2010, and the purpose of that committee is to coordinate and negotiate with applicants, property owners, and their representatives on those terms and the commitments related to applications like annexations, as well as development agreements as deemed necessary. Procedurally, this would be that if you choose to send this to the negotiating committee, that recommendation would go to the Planning Commission, then ultimately back to Town Council. This, just to give you some more background information, this is the master plan for Buckwalter Place. You can see the Kroger, the St. Joseph Candler. The footprints always stay the same, but there has been some changes through the development of the project, where the developer does not see that the fit for those units at this time for this place. Although it's not within the Buckwalter Place Commerce Park, the live-work element has been addressed with the apartment complex that's right in the vicinity and through some other development through that project. This gives you an idea of that sending and receiving zone. So Buckwalter Place, moving up those units, like I said, right now they're specifically to Buckwalter Place through those conditions, and they're asking that they be sent to that other location that's shown in the arrow there at 278 and Hampton Parkway. This is the approved master plan for that development, that receiving area as we have right now. And then this is just for your information at this time. This has not been reviewed or submitted for the process as far as staff review or planning commission review, but this is a very conceptual what-if scenario. So should those units be approved to be, those restrictions be approved to be lifted from those conditions, this could be what may develop. But again, this would have to go through the master plan approval process. But again, this just gives you an idea of kind of what they're thinking should their request be entertained. So next steps, like I said, really what we're here today is to simply send the request to the negotiating committee. So the first step, again, would be the referral, just simply by majority vote, to send this to the negotiating committee. Should that be the step that you decide to go through, the next step would be for the growth management department would go through the logistics of getting those meetings set up and established. And at that time, really that negotiating committee would go through the review, the negotiation, and come up with a recommendation ultimately to forward to Planning Commission. Depending on how those conversations go and the direction of the negotiating committee, there could be subsequent meetings scheduled. Like I said, once you go through that process, the Planning Commission would review what comes out of the negotiating committee and make a recommendation ultimately to come to you all through a resolution. And then continuing on, this outlines what those steps would be should the resolution be approved, how we would go through and work through making those changes. Like I said as well, there would be a workforce housing agreement that would outline those conditions if there are some tied to that. Really all depends what the negotiations come out of that negotiating committee. Ultimately, there's a proposed motion on the screen. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, and I believe the applicant is here as well.
Questions?
What's going to replace the 392 units that are there now?
It was once contemplated that there would be a housing element where St. Joseph Candler has now taken the footprint up.
And on those units, were there any of those to be workforce housing?
Not as part of the agreement at that time, no.
Questions down here?
The little sketch that you showed, it showed basically 13 buildings. Approximately 30 units per building. Is that, am I somewhere close on that? 13?
Quick math.
So, which is, you know. Any discussions or any knowledge of the 10% or the 10% affordable units going to be in one building, or are they going to be here and there? You know, I'm just asking these questions. Maybe these answers haven't, we don't know yet or whatever, but it's.
It'll go to negotiating committee and that's where all of that's going to kind of take place. Where do they go? How many? That it might be 10, it might be 20, it might be whatever. I think getting that group and having 2 citizens there with anybody who wants to come, it's public. We have a county representative there, so it'll be hashed out. That it's just given this, it was set up for that.
Right.
So we
I understand. I think it's a great idea, a great way to do it.
And then it comes back to us after it goes to planning. So if you don't like what was said, this has a role.
Maybe we can get 20% instead of 10%.
Well, that's why this is just sending it to negotiating committee to discuss all of that. And I hope everyone has comment, and it's, those are pretty well attended in the past. So it is very important to make right or continue greatness. If we're doing better and we know better, great. But if we can do other things, that meeting.
And I will, just to further answer your question briefly, there are some provisions, if it's chosen to go in that direction, that are in the Unified Development Ordinance that outline workforce housing units and affordable housing units, that they're dispersed throughout the development, and that it could be something that's used as a guide or discussion point to start. And also, to that negotiating committee, like the mayor said, right now it's comprised of the mayor, so we have Town of Bluffton representatives, Beaufort County, Citizen, as well as Planning Commission as well. So that's.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, on this conceptual you have, doesn't it look like there's the faded out part of their acreage as well? Or am I wrong? Yeah, the faded out, the purple and peach, B and C are additional. So you counted what you read. It's down here too. All of this.
Oh.
Yeah. You just counted the one, the
I
A.
realize.
A are apartments, B is restaurant, which I'm guessing is I guess we'll see it when we get it. A little more detail.
Right, this is just what could
conceptual.
possible.
So it's not what you're thinking. You're not.
I see what you're saying now.
No,
I didn't
that will
even
come
realize
back to
that
you
was
for
part
review.
of it.
Yeah. So not new territory, but foreign territory. We haven't been in it all together, and I think it's a good setup that was set up long ago. So any other questions? There's a motion just to send it to negotiating committee. It's to decide if we want to do it, and if we want to do it, what do we do with it? It's not saying this is guaranteed. Any other questions? Is there a motion to request to refer the request by Southeastern to remove certain restrictions for the use of 392 residential dwelling units within the Buckwalter Planned Unit Development to the Town of Bluffton Negotiating Committee?
So moved.
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion? And again, that's just going to nothing set in stone now. It's just going to this.
Still comes back to us.
Absolutely. You may decide you don't want to move them. You might, whatever. So it's a great process. Any other discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. There's a consent agenda with several items on it. Is there anything you'd like to pull off for more discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed on the agenda?
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for all of that. All very good information. I'd ask all of you to go on our town website and you can see all of this listed in detail. We do not have a second set of public comments, so we don't have any other public comment, so that's closed. Is there a motion to move into executive session for personnel matters regarding town council appointments of boards, committees, and commissions? That is FOIA Act 3470A1.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
We're going into executive session. Thank you all for coming.